It was a gray Thursday morning when Mrs. Green walked into my clinic for her annual checkup. She was 74, cheerful as always, with that same lavender scarf she wore every year. "I almost didn't come this time," she said, laughing. "Nothing's wrong with me, Doc." "Why waste your time?" I smiled, but I'd heard those words more times than I could count right before something changed forever. Her tests that day showed a small irregularity. Not a storm. Not yet, just a cloud forming in the distance. "It's probably nothing," I told her, though a quiet part of me knew better. 2 weeks later, we caught it early enough to act. She survived. She lived 10 more years, 10 more birthdays, 10 more garden springs, 10 more chances to tell her grandchildren how beautiful life can be when you still have it. That moment, and the thousands like it across my 50 years of medicine, shaped how I see aging. It's not about luck. It's about awareness, the courage to look even when you feel fine. The 1% of older adults who never let cancer take them by surprise are not invincible. They are simply vigilant in small, consistent ways. They show up. They ask questions. They stay curious about their own bodies. I used to think disease was the enemy, but that's not true. The real enemy is silence, the months, even years, when people tell themselves they're okay and skip the scan, skip the salad, skip the morning walk. You see, the body often whispers long before it screams. Those whispers are what the 1% learn to hear. I remember sitting in my office, looking at Mrs. Plank, Green's chart, thinking about all the others who hadn't come in time. Strong men who dismissed fatigue as just old age. Women who waited too long to mention the pain that came and went. They didn't mean to gamble with their lives, they just didn't think the clock was already ticking. When you reach your 70s, health becomes a conversation, not a command. Your body doesn't shout orders. It negotiates. It asks for color in your meals, movement in your mornings, calm in your nights. And if you answer, it rewards you. If you ignore it, well, it remembers. Let me tell you something I learned late. The smallest actions, done faithfully, build invisible armor. A handful of greens with every meal, a steady weight, neither too high nor too low. A willingness to check, to ask, to know. That's how the 1% live, not by fear, but by attention. They're not lucky. They're awake. In my early years as a physician, I was too focused on treating. I wanted to fix what was broken. But prevention, that quiet, patient work, was harder. It required trust, partnership, presence. It required people to believe that a test could save them long before a treatment could. That belief isn't natural. It must be cultivated. So if you're listening to me now, think about this. The next appointment you've been putting off, the next test, you're too tired to schedule. It's not an inconvenience. It's a vote for your next 10 springs. Every screening is a message to your future self. I choose to stay here longer. I've seen miracles. Yes, but they're rarely sudden. They're built one small habit at a time. The 1% who never let cancer win are not blessed. They're disciplined in kindness toward themselves. So tonight, before bed, make one small promise: to listen to your body's Keter language. Maybe it's that subtle fatigue, that slight change in digestion, that mole you've been meaning to check. Pay attention to the whispers. They're not threats. They're invitations to care. And when you wake tomorrow, take your first sip of water and whisper back to your body, "I'm listening." That's where health begins, not in fear, but in partnership. Mrs. Green's story stayed with me for years, not because of her diagnosis, but because of what she taught me afterward. Every time she came for a follow-up, she brought something fresh from her garden: tomatoes, herbs. Once, even a small pumpkin. She'd set it on my desk and say, "Doc, I'm feeding the soil the same way I'm feeding myself." There was wisdom in that simple act. She had turned her fear into nourishment. That's what survival really is. Not a fight, but a daily cultivation of small good things. I think of how many of you have walked into exam rooms carrying invisible weight, the dread before a test result, the silence at dinner, because you don't want to worry your children, the quiet deal you make with yourself to be strong. But strength isn't silence. It's gentleness with what scares you. The 1%, the ones who age with grace, who keep illness at arm's length, don't toughen themselves against fear. They soften around it, look it in the eye, and ask what it's trying to teach. There was a man named Walter, a retired postman. He used to say, "I spent 40 years delivering messages. Then one day my body delivered one back, a shadow on a scan, caught early because his daughter insisted he go for his first colon screening at 72. He told me later that he almost skipped it, said he felt fine. Didn't see the point. When the result came back positive for a small, treatable tumor, he wept not from fear, but from relief. He said, 'Doc, I didn't know early detection could feel like mercy.' That word mercy still moves me, because that's what preventive care really is. It's not punishment, not paranoia, but mercy for your future self. The act of checking before it's too late is an act of tenderness, not fear. It's saying, I value this body enough to listen while it still speaks softly. Over the years, I began to see patterns. The 1% who rarely face severe cancer weren't chasing magic diets or miracle pills. They were steady, almost quiet in their discipline. They ate colorfully greens, reds, oranges, foods that looked like sunlight on a plate. They moved their bodies daily, not to burn calories, but to keep the river flowing inside them. They kept their appointments, even when they didn't want to hear the results. And perhaps most importantly, they forgave themselves for the years they hadn't done so. I remember asking one patient, Evelyn, how she stayed so calm after a biopsy scare. She smiled and said, "I just imagine my cells listening to music. I give them something peaceful to dance to." She wasn't being poetic. She was practicing faith in her body. There's science in that too. The calmer you are, the clearer your immune system works. The body listens to tone as much as to treatment. You, too, can build that harmony. You don't have to change everything at once. Begin with one small awareness: how you breathe, what you eat, how often you laugh. Notice how tension settles in your shoulders and gently invite it to leave. The moment you pay attention, you step into that 1%, not because you're better, but because you're present. When I look back on my career, I realize I wasn't just treating disease, I was teaching awareness. Awareness that cancer doesn't arrive out of nowhere. It grows in the soil of neglect and stress and disconnection. But awareness can also grow stronger through community, through gratitude, through care. Tonight, before bed, take a slow breath in for 4 seconds. Hold for 7, and exhale for 8. As you breathe, think of it as cleaning out old fear, making room for trust. This, too, is prevention. You may not control what the years bring, but you can guide how you meet them. And maybe tomorrow, when you step outside and feel the morning sun, you'll remember Mrs. Green's garden, Walter's letter to himself, Evelyn's dancing cells, and you'll realize that the secret of the 1% isn't found in medicine, but in mindfulness. Now, go pour yourself a glass of water, feel it travel through you, and thank your body for listening. That's the quiet ritual of the 1%. A daily conversation between gratitude and life.